Today, I want to talk about polar blues. I think we've all seen them at this point in almost every pet store. Um, Now, there's a lot of mystery behind them and a lot of, what's actually in them and all of that. And I kind of want to break down what people think's in them, what I think is in them, and why I think my thoughts. Why I think what I think is correct. Um, and I'm going to show you a lot of polar blues and what I think's in polar blue, and then I'll probably end up going over some polar blue hybrids today of what other breeders have done and what I think the future of polar blue could look like in the community. Obviously, at this point, these breed almost as true as convicts. They are very, very prolific hybrids, and obviously, a lot of the things that people see is actually polar blue parrots, and they think it's a parrotfish, right? They think it's a parrot hybrid. And I understand why they think that, because if you search up parrot, you're going to get this, right? Obviously, they're thinking, oh my god, obviously somebody bred a convict with a parrot, got the short body, and maintained this look, which is an understandable thought process. I completely understand why. The issue with that, in my opinion, is how the short body is inherited, which I'll go into more later when I show the actual hybrids. But the basis of blood parrot is Amph and Veha. So if you breed a Midas to a Sin, you get a good, decent amount that's actually short body, and I wouldn't say a decent amount. You get a couple that are short body, and you can select that trait, which makes the short body on parrots, blood parrots, King Kong parrots, mammons, etc., a Veha Amph disruption in the genetics, basically. You know, so it's not super concrete. It's basically two incompatible genes coming together. I've had some Rainbow Texas cichlid hybrids and F2 come out with some shorter spines because they weren't aligning properly, and those got cooled off, obviously. But that is the basis for blood parrots and why they're short, is from the Amph and the Veha genetics. And obviously, people see the parrot and they're like, or the polar blue, and they're like, obviously it's a short body, so it has to be from another short body hybrid that's already in the hobby. There's already guppy short bodies. There's molly short bodies. Short body is not. It's not a random mutation. It's not like. It's not rare. Most breeders cull them off. Other breeders keep them, and then you have short body mollies. Does that mean the short body molly is part parrot? No. It just means the mutation happened there. There's short body rams, short body green terrors. I've seen a short body dovii, short body jaguar. Does that mean that the jaguar got parrot in it? No. It's just a simple mutation that people usually cull out, but they didn't. So, with the fact that I think blood parrots and polar blues are different, is because of how they interact. So, what I think a polar blue is made up of is Honduran red point, which Honduran red point is a cousin to the main convict cichlid. Here's what it looks like. I feel like somebody probably crossed a Honduran red point to a convict cichlid. And they got a short body. They said, this is profitable, and they started breeding them in a mass production, stabilized the look, and started selling them. And they said, we're going to call it a polar blue parrot or a blue parrot, etc., because parrot is a good sales name. Parrot's an amazing sales name because people already have an idea of what parrot is. They already know that parrots are short bodies, and a lot of people buy parrots. Like it's an easy sale tactic. So if you're producing a hybrid that's already short body, may not have any parrot in it, it's a really easy way for them to have made it into the market as just a sales name. That's why I don't usually call them polar blue parrots or anything like that. I just call them polar blues because I don't really like the connotation of being correlated to a blood parrot. And the reason I think the convict is in the mix and not just straight Honduran red point is because of how the Honduran red points look. I think that the polar blues are a little bit off of coloration, and just the main look of them looks like they have the convict in it. Now, if we're going to talk about inheritance, let me go down to the polar blue section of my website, because they have been used in a couple of hybrids. These are going to be my main hitters right here, because I thought this was such a cool thing. So on Facebook, there was this guy that bred polar blue to Texas, and almost, I would say, 80 to 90% of his hybrids came out short body, which is phenomenal, honestly. Because when you breed a blood parrot to a Texas, you don't usually get that many short bodies. You might get one or two, maybe 1% to 5% might be short body in F1, which is a low percentage. Which, why would Veja Amph based hybrid compare differently with the polar blue if it's the same thing, right? And the reason I think they completely inherited different is because it's two different sets of mutations, right? Obviously, the Veja Amph is from incompatibility, and I think the polar blue is a completely different type of mutation on short body. I wish I had some pictures, but there are some pictures of some F2 short body thigh silk polar blue hybrids. And in those babies, they were super short. Like F1 came out short body from the polar blue, but it was a polar blue to a short body thigh silk. F1 came out short body leaning towards the polar blue. The F2 allowed the realignment for the Veja Amph short body and the polar blue short body. And the babies were messy, but they were short, because it was two short bodies stacked on top of each other, not just the same one. So I think that's enough to say that they're different. The percentage being inherited, as well as how they're just reacting together. Like when you breed them together and you actually realign the alleles or the alleles, you get two different effects. So going through polar blues now. Polar blues have been used in a couple mixes at this point. Macaw's been pretty common. I've seen them. The firemouths were a one and done, and these are the oldest pictures I ever got of them. Like I never got any more pictures of them. I never got to see them develop more. But honestly, I'm not disappointed in what I see here. There's good color reception. There's a little bit of pearls, and the flaring's there. Polar blue Sahika, I think, looks phenomenal. I actually talked to this breeder a good amount, so he bred Polar Sahika back to Polar Blue, and those ones look really good as well. And then there's the Texas. Now, I really want to hit hard on a specific breeder named Kyle. I think it's Kyle Reese. Let me triple check. Let's see. Yep. So Kyle Reese has been killing it with polar blue hybrids, like decimating it. I've talked to him basically from the beginning when he started getting hybrids and then breeding hybrids, and he's been destroying it. So let's go look at some of the stuff that he's done. One of his first things he did was called the Polar Tiger. This is a polar blue to a cutter eye, and I think this shows a phenomenal base of what polar blues could do for the hobby / replace other stuff that's already common but has fertility issues. Because a lot of polar blue hybrids have great fertility in males. Like a lot of convict hybrids, which I would think is half the basis of polar blue, has great fertility in hybrids. Parrots, terrible fertility. Terrible fertility. It's that Amph. That Amph Veja really wrecks stuff up. But this is called the Polar Tiger. So this is polar blue to cutter eye, Crypto Heroes cutter eye. And I really, really like these, honestly. The shape obviously isn't perfect short body, but the color starts to look different. You know, there's a little bit more yellow. The orange is back on the belly. The shape is different. And then he did two things I really like with this. He hasn't hit F2 yet. Well, he hasn't hit the average F2 yet. So he hasn't bred sibling to sibling for the realignment alleles and allowing for the grandparent traits to come back. What he ended up doing is he took F1, and he bred one back to Cuttereye. So there's a 75-25 mix. That's 75% Cuttereye, 25% Polar Blue. And then there's a 75-25, 75% Polar Blue and a 25% Cuttereye. So he took both of them combined, and then he took one back to both for a new outcome, right? So the first one we're going to look at is the one that's actually 25% Polar Blue, because I think this is amazing potential for the future of short bodies if you like short bodies. I'm not a big fan of short bodies. I just know there's a lot of potential in them, and I know a lot of people like them. And the biggest issue with them is that most of the time they don't have fertile males, right? So this one is 75% Cuttereye. Pearling's different, shape's slightly different than a Polar Blue, but that's pretty good short body right there. And again, it's a pretty good short body. I don't know about you, but the fact that it's 25% Polar Blue and still has a decent short body is pretty freaking nice, especially with the 75% Cuttereye, because Cuttereye is really an untapped species in mixes. So there's a lot of unknown in this potential, especially as it continues to grow up, because this is still just a baby. So if we look at its siblings, this one's got still the short body, slightly different markings, and boosted yellows, which I think long-term could be really nice for just like a yellow Polar Blue type or as a base for other X breeds. Then there's another sibling. This one's not as short body. It got thicker bars because Cuttereye have a little bit smaller bars than Polar Blues. It's not perfectly short body, but it's still a little bit there. This one as well. And then we're back. So that is the 75% Cuttereye, 25% Polar Blue mix, with the 25% Polar Blue really pulling in there for the short body. I think if he was to take a short body off the 75-25 and continue to outcross it, he could carry that trait pretty well, a lot better than the Veha Amp disruption. Now, if you're breeding the Polar Blues, you're like, oh, well, I want them blue. You could try to breed to F2 because you could allow that realignment of alleles, or you could breed back to the Polar Blue, so it's a 75-25 mix. But before I go on to that point, I don't know why I skipped over this one. This 75% Cuttereye, 25% Polar Blue looks fantastic, in my opinion. I mean, it's not a perfect short body, but the striping is really unique, and the yellow base coloration I think is going to intensify as it ages, and this is going to be an awesome breeder. I've talked to Kyle a couple times about possibly getting me some of the 75% Cuttereye to breed to F2 again, just so I could do 75-75, get the realignment of Cuttereye some more, and get more realignment of that Polar Blue. But I think these are going to be really cool in the long run of things. So now you wanted, you outcrossed it and you want the blue back. You're like, oh, I want that blue back. I miss it. So you cross back to Polar Blue. What are you going to get? You're going to get some stuff like this. Right off the bat, boom, there's your blue. It's 75% Cuttereye and you got your blue back. You got a little bit of a different shape. You got a little bit of different markings. Sibling to that, not as nice. And that's because you increase the convict in it. It's not going to do the best. I mean, given the fact that it's part convict, part hunter and red point, part Cuttereye, I'm not going to say this is the ugliest fish out there. It's really not. It's got a nice coloration on the bottom fin. It's got some nice colors here. But from what we've already seen from the Polar Tigers, it's not really as nice as one. It's not as nice as the 75% Cuttereye. It doesn't have the blue. Let's go to the next one. This one, really clean. I mean, it's not a short body, but it has that blue coloration if you're after that. Then another one that didn't get the blue, and it's got the increased convict. Another blue one with the short body, unique markings, and then another normal. And oof, I love the blues. Honestly, these are just so clean. I could look at, if I had a tank with these, I'd probably enjoy this a little bit more than a normal Polar Blue just because I like the uniqueness of it. When you breed two fish with different markings like this, you can have a lot of diversity in the fry, and you're still going to get that blue coloration. I would consider that a win. And then he has taken the Polar Tiger, aka Polar Blue Cuttereye, into a lot of different directions that I have really enjoyed seeing. Like, when I say he's been pushing the boundaries for polar blue hybrids. He really has been pushing that and seeing the inheritance side of things. So we've seen 75% cutter eye, 75% polar blue, and now we're about to see a 50% firemouth, 25% cutter eye, 25% polar blue hybrid. So that is going to be right here. Look at that. Look at that. I mean, who would be disappointed in that? If you're breeding for polar blue and you want a slightly different base, that's pretty nice. For only being 25% polar blue and still being that strong, shows me that we could do a lot of stuff with polar blue. Like we do polar blue Veja possibly, and get it down to 25 or less percent, and have a really nice short body Veja with no amph in it at all. So we have highly fertile males. We could do short body Mayans for maybe a tiger striped, orange, red based short body without the fertility issues. Like, I'm a big person on pushing for no fertility issues, and this is looking like a fantastic way of getting short bodies with different looks. Like, obviously you can go the short body route. You get a short body Super Red Texas, short body Flowerhorn, short body. All of those are amph Veja based hybrids, and they don't pass on the best. This seems to be passing on a whole lot better than that. Plus, this doesn't bring the infertility issues that those would. Obviously, it's got a little bit of convict in it, so you have to do a little bit more elbow grease. But in the long run, I would prefer a little bit more elbow grease for a more consistent result. So, let's see. Next picture. I like the color coming in on this one. Really nice yellows. The firemouth's obviously coming in on the shape. The fins look like they have a little bit of red tint to them. This is, I think, the same fish. Yeah, this is the same fish, different angle. Got a little bit of pearls coming through. Sibling of this one got a little bit more of the polar blue. Now, it's not as short body as the initial one. This one's still more short body than the previous one. It's got more polar blue. It's got some pearling on the sides. It's got some pearling in the fins. This is really exciting to me because it means that we could possibly recreate crystal parrots using a polar blue base. I like crystal parrots. I would love to have a smaller version. I get it. Most Central American cichlids are 8+ inches. I prefer a little bit smaller. So a lot of my hybrid projects are going to be fish that are going to be maxing out at, I want them to be in a range of 5 to 6, maybe 7 inches. The polar blue being a possibility to knock out fertility as well as making the size a little bit smaller sounds phenomenal to me. Because crystal parrots that are like this big, I mean, they're impressive. But could you imagine having a tank like a 40, 55-gallon of crystal parrots that are like this big, that are super shiny, super short body, and just breed prolifically like a convict? I mean, that seems like a win to me. Here's another firemouth one. This one, let's be honest, this is extremely short body. Like, for being 25% polar blue, this is ridiculous. Obviously, if I was the breeder, I'd probably cull this one. I don't know what Kyle's planning with it. I think he might be planning to cull it because this is ridiculous. But it is still amazing to show what polar blue is capable at 25%. This is another 50% firemouth. This one's obviously taking more after the polar blue and the firemouth versus the cutter eye. This one looks nice. I think this is probably my favorite picture of it so far because the color in the fins is looking amazing. And then every single one of those dots is a type of pearl. This could be really, really pretty. Like my firemouth jaguar, if a jaguar was taken to this, I would imagine some pretty interesting results. Then he took... Okay, what's going on? So that was this bred to a firemouth, which I think is a pretty good result. I mean, first generation looks all right. Maybe not better than either parents. But so far we're seeing this one looks great. This one looks good. This one holds a lot of potential. So he then bred a polar tiger to a Diablo Super Red Sin. What is a Diablo Super Red Sin? What is all these fancy names people are coming up with? Diablo Super Red Sin was produced by Hugh Hoffman in Ohio. He used a Diablo 75 to a Super Red Sin. Super Red Sin is a sin-based hybrid from Asia, and it has a nice nuntial hump, and then he bred it to the Diablo 75. What is the Diablo 75? Diablo 75 is 75% Diablo Biffa, 25% Hartwigii. So Diablo Super Red Sin is 50% Super Red Sin, 37.5% Diablo Biffa, and 12.5% Hartwigii. So, while it was smaller, Kyle decided that he wanted to breed it to his polar tiger. So the offspring are 25% Cutterai, 25% Polar Blue, 25% Super Red Sin, 18.75% Diablo Biffa, and 6.25% Hartwigii. So as of right now, they are a pretty solid 5 blood, and let's check that out. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on with them. Let's see what they look like. Here's probably my favorite of the batch. Now, you might look at it and be like, meh, I could get that from a parrot. Difference is, this thing's going to be fertile. This thing's going to stay smaller. This one's going to be a higher reception for color, and it's going to be a higher reception for pearls. This base shows so much potential for the future of smaller and parrot-shaped fish. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This is another one of Kyle's crosses that I am really thinking about getting, because look at the short body at 25% Polar Blue. And the color, I mean, it's 25% this. Look at that. You can see it in there, but it's being muddied out, and you get ones like this. This one, if it had a nuntial hump, I think could be extremely impressive, as well as the long-term color development. This one didn't get the short body, but the colors that are developing on it are looking really, really, really cool. This one in the bottom, I think it's a 75, but I'm not going to say what I think it is, because at the end of the day, this could be any of the mixes. So here is another Diablo Super Red Sin Polar Blue Cutterai mix. And this is just super exciting to me, because I think the potential for short body hybrids to move to a more Polar Blue base versus a parrot base is exponential. Like, you move some, say you buy these from Kyle, right? What would I do if I bought, he's calling these Sangria, by the way. So these are Sangria, Diablo Super Red Sin, Polar Tiger mix. If I was to buy a Sangria, there's two things I would do to it. One, I would breed more Veja into it. I like Veja's colors long term. I would want to boost those. The Diablo Super Red Sin already has a really nice red base to it. So if I added more Diablo, or a Diablo-based hybrid, like Ethan in Ohio has Breedori Diablo 75 mixes, I'd probably breed that into here. See if I can get that Breedori to help even out the face, and the Diablo 75 to realign and increase the reds in the fish while carrying over the short body. And then I'd probably do another side project with the Sangria, and I would probably take it to Herichthyi, like a Texas Carpentis, Super Red Texas, Jaguar, if I really, really wanted some crazy pearling. And I'd take that really pearly fish, that's short body, and I would breed it to the parrot, that's short body, that's got, well, not parrot, but the higher percentage Veja, that's short body, to the pearly one. So now you're at what? This is 25. You outcross both of them. That's at 12.5%. When you cross both of them, it'll be 12.5% Polar Blue, 12.5% Cutterai. It'll have the Diablo with the increased other Vejas in it, rounding out the shape, and then it'll have that pearl species of whatever you chose. And all of that mixed together, as long as the pearl species you chose was a freaking flower horn, you should have pretty good fertility, because Herichthyi's, Parachromis, and Veja shouldn't have any fertility issues. Parachromis, Herichthyi's, and Veja mixed to Convict family and Crypto Heroes family so far have not had any fertility issues. So mixing all of them together should not have any fertility issues, while also maintaining the short body. This holds a lot of potential in the future for some amazing short body hybrids. Now, and it all just has to go with a fish you get from your local fish store for what? It depends on your area, but I've seen these go for as cheap as $5 up to $25. I mean, come on. That's insane. The potential of these is insane. And obviously, Kyle has some stuff for sale. Like, he's got, I don't think he's got these for sale yet. Don't go talking to him about the fire mouths and whatnot. I don't think he's got any of those for sale yet. But I think he's got the F1s for sale still. So the Polar Tiger, aka Polar Blue Cutterai mix, I think he's got for sale. So if you're wanting to do some really crazy crosses, I would snag one of these and start going with it. Start pushing it into a direction that you think has a lot of potential. Because as long as you invest the energy, I wouldn't say this is going to be cross the polar tiger to a flower horn and we're one and done. That's not the case. This is going to be take the polar cuttereye to a species you think is going to hold a lot of potential, breed the siblings together, breed a baby back to the polar tiger, put the elbow grease in to create something that has a lot of long-term potential. Because these, I could see just being the foundation for a lot of really amazing hybrids. And then kind of looping back to what polar blues do. Here is a polar blue gold base bred in the not UK, in Europe by a friend of mine. It was a short body flower horn to a short, obviously polar blue, so short body. The babies turned out pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't say they're amazing for color, but for shape, obviously they have the amph beak, for the flower horn beak, but they got a decent amount of pearling, which shows potential for polar blue to be a little bit more pearl receptive than a normal convict. Which, what would I breed to a polar blue for pearls? Oh, that looks, I love that. I think that looks so good. As a simple F1, I think this looks fantastic. And I think if you just breed sibling to sibling and line breed it a little bit, you could easily round this face out with some F2s, as well as looking back at Kyle's F2 back cross, you can get the blues back. So if you could get these blues onto this base and F2 with some pearls, I think that could be a really fantastic hybrid that just looks nice and that's not too complicated. Now, obviously, what does this mean for polar blues? It means that some of the polar blues should be more pearl receptive than a convict, which means that if you didn't want to get Kyle's cutter eye mix, you could just go straight polar blue into something. You know, you don't want to pay shipping, you just want to try something out. I do think the cutter eye is going to be a little bit more extra pearl receptive and color receptive than polar blue long term, and it adds a little bit more of a twist. But if you're just wanting to work straight with polar blue, I think there's a lot of options that you can choose from, and that's completely up to you. So at the end of the day, I think that polar blues are a mixture of Honduran red point with convict, with a different mutation that causes the inheritance to be completely different than amph and parrot. And I think that the future of polar blues being used in hybrids for short bodies has a fantastic ceiling as long as you guys are willing to put the work in. If you guys have any other questions, put them down in the comments. Message me on Facebook. Let's talk it out. I would love to hear what you guys are thinking about polar blues now. What are your guys' thoughts? What would you want to see them crossed with? What do you think about the theory of polar blue being more so a Honduran red point convict mix than a parrot, especially with how the inheritance works? Comment and stay tuned for my next video.